to the Fast Mode podcast series. I'm Tara Neil, and with me today is Ivan Skenderoski, Managing Partner at Salience Consulting. Salience Consulting is a management advisory firm specializing in digital business strategies, technology, and professional services. Ivan has been at the forefront of the telecom industry for over 25 years, helping businesses, governments, and investors navigate the evolving digital landscape. Based in Dubai since 2008, he founded Salience to drive innovative telecom and digital solutions, overseeing both financial and operational strategy while leading high-impact projects across Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. Salience Consulting, in collaboration with Pioneer Consulting, has recently signed an agreement with the government of Chile to conduct a feasibility study for a submarine fiber-optic cable connecting Chile to Antarctica, aiming to enhance regional connectivity, support scientific research, and position Chile as a key digital gateway to the wide continent. Welcome, Ivan. Great to have you on today's episode.
Great to be invited and happy to participate.
Awesome. Okay, so let's start. Can you tell us more about the feasibility study, including its objectives? What is the expected timeline for completion?
Right. So it's quite a unique project which we have engaged. It's initiated by the Chilean government, and it's about connecting the last unconnected continent, Antarctica. As you might know, it's quite a specific continent, which is governed by Antarctic Treaty back from 1959. A lot of scientific stations based on that continent. It's very important for a climate change research because it's looking at the ice melting, it's looking at regulating the currents, stores the carbon, and so on. So it's very unique feasibility study. We'll be looking to establish a way of connecting a cable between mainland Chile and Antarctica, and also serving those scientific installations on the Antarctica. There are currently over 50 permanent installations. There are some temporary ones belonging to various countries doing a lot of research in climate change and other research, and therefore we'll be looking at connecting maybe not all, but a vast majority of those installations. The problem is that they are currently relying on satellite connectivity, which is not great. As you know, not all the constellations of satellites have coverage of Antarctica, and if you're looking at a long period going in the future, I think a more permanent solution needs to be found rather than what I call a stopgap solution. In terms of our project, duration will be about a year to year and a half, depending on various factors. We'll need to visit Antarctica, look at some of the environmental, technical challenges, and so on. But we do expect to finish by sort of early next year, I would say, give or take.
Wow. What about the environment? Do you have to deal with a lot of harsh conditions to go there and to study and all that?
Well, yes, correct. So there's a specific time window when we could travel, and the next time window will open from October onwards. We are supported by obviously the Chilean government and the facilities and the instruments they've got on hand to support our travel there and the visits to the installations. But yes, I mean, it's very windy, the climate is unpredictable, quite harsh. We need to follow specific instructions when visiting the sites and so on. So it will be an experience to go there with the team, but we're looking forward for that.
Wow, sounds like a scene from a movie where you actually go down to Antarctica to figure out where to lay the cables and to connect all the guys who are doing their research there. Well, okay, so how will Salience Consulting's expertise contribute to this study?
So we as a company, we've done a number of feasibility studies for similar digital ventures, including subsea cables in the past. We've also done a lot of study on demand forecast, looking at sort of 15, 20, 25-year period making the right assumptions for what might happen within that continent from a scientific perspective, what are the demands of those applications in terms of capacity and so on. And also, I mean, we've got a vast experience working with governments and also development banks, which are key in making this project happen. I mean, the scientific community is the beneficiary, but the funding needs to come from the governments and those development banks. Now, on this project, we also have a partner company called Pioneer Consulting, and those guys are specialists in subsea cables. They've deployed a number of subsea cables across the globe. They've also been involved in a number of cables in the polar regions, mainly, obviously, the Arctic, and therefore, sort of their know-how is quite crucial on implementing this feasibility study because they've got a practical hands-on experience. They also come from the vendor community, so they know the technical solutions. So we are relying a lot on them for the technical aspects, and Salience is covering most of the regulatory demand, market study, and obviously the financial model, the commercial viability, which is quite important. Now, one more specific thing about the cable, which is quite unique, obviously, it's the smart sensors, which will be part of the design. And those smart sensors are to sense the seabed in terms of movements on the seabed, any variations, any currents, and so on. So those sensors, part of the cable, will become a very important collection of data points for the scientific community. So the cable itself, not just passing the data from A to B, it's part of a scientific experiment.
Yeah, I can imagine that. So that's going to be a new feature, right? Because it's an IoT kind of component. And I guess in previous deployments of subsea cables, you wouldn't have that, and you have that now. So is that like a new innovation?
Well, it's been around for a few years. It's been already deployed on some cables, but it's something which obviously in these harsh conditions needs to be done in a way that it's sustainable, because we don't want to take the cable out of the water for repairs very often. So it needs to be done properly, I would say.
Or send someone down there to go and check out those sensors, right?
Well, I think that would be hard to do.
Yes. Okay. So you mentioned about the support that you received from the Chilean government, right? So what makes Chile uniquely positioned to serve as a connectivity gateway to Antarctica?
Right. So, I mean, if we look at the map, obviously Chile is the closest one to the Antarctica region. Chile also has islands where most of the scientific bases are deployed, King George and all those smaller islands around. So if you look geopolitically also, I mean, Chile is currently the gateway to Antarctica. They've got the region in South Chile, the Magallanes region, with Puerto Williams and Punta Arena. Those are the gateways to Antarctica from where the scientific installations travel. All the tourism also is done from those points. So I think Chile is the most important, I would say, factor in enabling this connectivity. The government of Chile with Subtel in the past have been also working on strengthening the connectivity to the Magallanes region. They implemented a few years back a project which was a combination of subsea cables and terrestrial connectivity called Project Austral. They successfully finished it, and that provides additional boost of connectivity in that sort of southern part of the country. What we believe also is with this cable being sort of the last link connecting that corridor, these regions in south of Chile will become more important. So we are looking at potentially all the data gathered from Antarctica being stored in facilities within this region. So I wouldn't be surprised if that stimulates data center development, where the data is stored and accessed from the scientific community. So a lot of developments there, not just Antarctica. I think the Magallanes region of Chile is looking at at further developments, but a lot has been done in the past as well.
So we can expect some excitement to start taking place in these regions, right? As I guess if you're
Exactly.
opening data centers, you need workers, you need people to build those data centers and stuff.
Right,
Yep.
right. So I mean, we will be looking as part of this project, sort of the wider sort of social and sort of analysis of the benefits it brings to that region. But yes, I mean, we should be looking at more developments to support this scientific industry, I would say, down there.
Wow, amazing. So on the other hand, what are the main technical, environmental, and logistical challenges involved in deploying a submarine fiber optic cable to Antarctica? It's a huge project. It's a very heavy project, right? So I'm sure that there are a lot of challenges.
Correct. It's a difficult project. I mean, from a technical perspective, obviously, we need to understand the route the cable will be taking, the seabed conditions there. The currents are very strong, so deploying the cable will be very challenging. We need to find a suitable vessel from the supplier community, which will be able to sustain those harsh climate conditions. Obviously, the terrain, it's ice, it's very hard soil, so deployment within those conditions will be very challenging from a technical perspective. Now, if we look from the other aspects, as you know, the Antarctica is governed by this Antarctica 1959 treaty, which might need update if you ask me, but we'll leave that to the lawyers to decide. There are multiple territorial claims on Antarctica, on parts of Antarctica, so we'll need to get a consensus by all the countries which are claiming territory there to land the cable and connect also terrestrially, because once the cable lands to Antarctica, we need to also enable the downward terrestrial connectivity for the installations which are not on the shore. And obviously the environmental, I mean, the flora and fauna living there, it's quite unique. We need to make sure it's protected. We need to make sure that, once the cable is deployed and further operated, it doesn't sort of harm any of those living creatures which are there, and they are also part of the research. So I think it's quite a balance between sort of bringing that machinery to deploy the cable and making sure that we don't disturb both the scientists, the animals and the flora there.
Okay, making sure the penguins remain happy in their habitat.
Exactly.
Okay, so yeah, I was just intrigued. Once you complete the studies, what are the next steps? That's going to be taken afterwards.
Right. So once, obviously, within the study itself, we'll have to engage a lot of stakeholders, right? So we're looking about engaging both the scientific installations and also the governments which are sponsoring those scientific installations. So countries like Chile and UK and Argentina and so on, they've got a specific role to play. So they need to effectively gain the support on a long term for making an investment in this cable, because at the moment, they're looking at sort of a year by year expenditure into connectivity, where now they'll need to look at more of a long-term total cost of ownership of connectivity across 20 years in order for them to make the investment in the cable. We'll be also talking with the banks, the development banks, CAF, which is the Latin America Development Bank, the World Bank, and so on, for them to be able to be part of this initiative. As part of the feasibility, there'll be an early engagement, but obviously once the feasibility is done and the commercial model is set, we'll need to see those stakeholders creating the venture which will deploy the cable. They need to make the financial commitments towards the venture, and obviously we need to engage the vendor community to select the right vendor to deploy this cable. I mean, we as Salience, we are hoping to continue working after the feasibility. Obviously, we do have experience in implementing ventures and supporting the operations. So, we'll be looking for continued involvement until hopefully we see the ready for service and the cable being deployed.
Wow. Amazing. You mentioned about the selection of vendors as well, right? So is there something that you guys will oversee, or is that something that is left to the project owners?
I think the vendor selection will touch upon it during the project. We'll need to potentially understand their capabilities, like I said, to deploy the cable in those conditions. We'll need to look at the timescales, because as you know, a lot of these vendors are quite unique and they're quite busy. So we need to understand the availability to manufacturing the cable, and also the availability of the vessel to deploy. So some early engagements will be done throughout the study, but the selection of the vendor will probably happen after the study and after the funding is available.
Wow, I think it's a huge task. It's an exciting task too, and probably it's one of the firsts, right, where you basically are going to weather through these very harsh conditions to lay those fiber cables and make sure that you serve the applications. So I have one last thing to just clarify. We did mention some of the use cases, right? One of them is climate research and stuff. Apart from that, are there any other applications that the project intends to support?
Right. So I mean, obviously, the main thing about what the cable will enable is this real-time processing of data. At the moment, the data is collected, stored, and then sometimes even physically transported to the mainland and onwards to be processed, right? So the main benefit of this cable is that real-time processing of data, which is very important, right? If you're doing observation of ice melting, if you're looking at how those water currents are progressing, you need real-time data, right? You need to understand what's happening in order to do your research and then provide feedback. Some of those sensors might need to be moved and so on. So this real-time processing of data is quite key, which will be enabled by the cable. We are looking at part of the climate monitoring. We are looking at astronomical observations. So the South Pole Telescope and similar installations, which are monitoring the skies. Obviously, the sea research is very important. And then the renewable energy and data transmission, right? So the Magellanes region is trying to position also themselves as sort of a green hydrogen sort of region, and a lot of wind energy potential. So those might be enabled through better connectivity and so on. So, and then we've got a lot of other advanced technologies which might be trialed there. As you know, there are no major hospitals in the Antarctica. So in terms of telemedicine and making sure the scientists and the tourists going there, they are monitored in terms of their health conditions, and if needed, we could look at a case study of establishing hospitals being served by telemedicine, because obviously there's some installations which are permanent. Those inhabitants, they stay there throughout the year, but they're cut off from the rest of the world for a number of months. And therefore, doing a telemedicine type of experience becomes quite crucial to make sure that they are observed throughout the years.
Well, I think those are really exciting applications, and I guess in the next 5 years we can see a lot of developments in the region, and we can see most of these applications being trialed or tested. So I guess this is something really interesting, and something that I guess our audience would be interested to follow up. So I guess we'll cover more stories from here as you guys go along. So with that, thanks Ivan for joining us in this session. Your insights are invaluable for us, and thanks for your time.
You're welcome, and like I said, happy to participate and happy to provide further updates once we effectively go on Antarctica and see what's happening there.
Yes, looking forward to it, and looking forward to all the photos and videos as well.
Sure, sure. We'll make sure we do.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess to everyone tuning in, thank you guys for listening. If you want to learn more about this topic, visit salienceconsulting.ae and follow us for more updates and insights as we continue to uncover the latest in technology and telecommunications. See you in our next session. Bye-bye.